Hello, folks. Welcome back to the Scarlet and Great podcast. We have a special edition for you, a very special guest and a co-host. This will be like the most classy edition of the podcast ever. If you guys are any fans of The Office and you remember that episode where Jim is in a tuxedo and he says classy like 15 times
He
about
wears the
Michael.
bow tie and then
Yes.
corporate comes in. Yeah.
Is it classy enough?
Yes, about Michael's birthday party. You've probably already heard that voice and know Cory did not do anything crazy over the following week. That was not him. This is your co-host Johnny Lunsford with Florida Cory Thompson, but we are very excited to bring in an actual real sports anchor, someone who's bringing way too much class to this show, Miss Stephanie Otey. Stephanie, thank you so much for joining us, and as you're broadcasting it, kind of looks like we're joining you too.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, we're glad that this worked out. And as our podcast is a big time Buckeye football podcast, we want to give a little bit of a background and perspective of you. So kind of give us your rundown, your official titles, pomp and circumstance and all that. And do us a favor and give us a little timeline on I guess your journey through school and where you're from and lead us up to now.
Yeah. So I'm a Columbus native. I grew up in Ohio, was always a Buckeye fan, but I'm the fourth kid in my family and they all went to Miami. So when it came to applying for colleges, I applied to one school and one school only, and it was Miami. It would have been like high school all over again to go to Ohio State. But when I went to college, I didn't know what I wanted to do. So the business school right there was an amazing business school. I had the grades to get in, so I did business, but also had an interest in health and medicine. So I double majored in marketing and kinesiology. But my junior year, I had an internship with KISS 107 in Cincinnati, and I had a really good time. Got to know several people in the office, and they pulled me in on the radio. The programming director did, and they called it Facey Fridays because that was my nickname, interned Facey. And I would just have fun on air. And they told me, I'd be really good at this. And I started to really enjoy it. And so I skipped my spring break that year to cover the Reds opening day. So that was the first sporting event I really did. And I loved it. And so that's when I decided, I want to do this, but I was kind of behind because I didn't know that until pretty much when college was over. I didn't have time to go for a third degree. And they basically told me real world experience is the best you can get in this field. So one day, my uncle, who was in the business, went around Ohio State with me. I had a lot of friends that were playing in that championship year. And so I just went around and made my own reel talking around Ohio State, built a reel and moved to Dallas, which usually they say don't go to a big market. And I kind of just gambled on myself and did that. I showed my reel around and I got some red carpet interviews for a show called Let's Go DFW. And then I used LinkedIn and networked like crazy. But at that point, I had a full-time sales job. I was selling logistics and then I sold digital marketing. But the general manager for the Texas Legends, which is the G League affiliate of the Dallas Mavericks, approached me and they needed someone to do their digital media. They have a segment called Texas Two-Step covering the two cornerstones of the Texas Legends, community and basketball. So I did that in the preseason, but he told me the only way I could get paid was to take on a sales job, which was significantly less money than what I was making selling logistics and marketing. So I ended up taking that on just for free. And I figured, this is great experience. I'll build on that. And I just kept going to practice, just going there as much as I could to get reps and get to know the team, the organization, and just worked my way in. And by the time the season came around, their games are aired on Fox Sports Southwest. They had a play-by-play analyst, color analyst that were really well known in the area. They're great guys. I still talk to them. They're still working in Dallas, covering the Texas Rangers and the Cowboys. And by that point, I was talking to the broadcasting director, and he let me get some shots at doing throws. I had halftime interviews, and then I got more and more reps throughout the season, getting quarter stand-ups and built more experience and became their sideline reporter. And I also had opportunities to go to the Dallas Mavericks and do digital reports there because there were just so many calls with our players. So that was my first break per se. I mean, I wasn't getting paid, but it was amazing experience covering a professional team in a top 5 market. I loved that experience. But then I got a paying job for media in Chicago. So I was working my way up. I was an MMJ, carried the camera around, doing local sports, pretty much any sport around, anchoring and reporting. And then that's when I moved back to Columbus for a full-time job. I was helping build an app, anchoring, producing, and editing. And then that's when I got the Football Fever, which covers Ohio State football specifically. And that's when I became their field reporter for that. And here we are now. So it's really come full circle to be able to come back to Columbus and cover Ohio State.
Wow, that's a great rise. And now who's the official entity then, the umbrella for the Ohio State field reporting? Is it straight through the university?
No, so it's a local station here in Columbus. It's ABC 6 and Fox 28.
Okay, fantastic. Well, that's an awesome. I also a business major here, and that's why I'm bad at this. I heard you and I saw your clip, and I was like, wow, she obviously went to college full time for this because she's actually good at this. So
I appreciate that.
Yeah, Cory, do you feel a little bit? We're without excuse now because we didn't go to school for this either. And you see how good Steph is, and remember, classy she is. And then we got us. So do you feel more like a buffoon now, Cory?
I don't think I could feel like more of a buffoon, but if we can drive that a little lower if we need to.
Yeah, it's kicking us while we're down. Well, it's really awesome for those. Check out Steph's highlight reel. You'll know what I'm talking about if you see her pinned tweet. Is it still your pinned tweet on Twitter?
Yeah,
Steph,
I joke with my agent. I have so many reels. There's so many. I have like a sideline reel, a hosting reel, just so many.
Well, that's
but yeah,
really
I have
cool.
one in there.
That's cool that you just like kind of a grassroots thing, like real world. I actually started my college field doing electronic media, sports broadcasting at Morehead State, and realized they had a good program for it and everything, but it's an extremely competitive field, and I was way too immature to lock that down at first. So did other things for a while, but yeah, you're right, real world experience, and you just kind of broke through and was like, no, I'm good at this. I'm good at this, so let me in. And it's good to have you here today. And we want to get your thoughts on some of this. There's a lot of nothingness happening right now for college football and specifically Ohio State. So I want to get your thoughts on how this is affecting your industry, specifically with no Big Ten football. How far does that go? Because I don't know if people understand all the stakeholders when it comes to Big Ten football.
I mean, the pandemic has hit the broadcasting industry very, very hard. I mean, people are tuning into the news as much as they can, but without sports, live events, I mean, we can't be there. There are reporters that went out into the riots and they were attacked and things like that. I had friends in local media who, had a really hard time dealing with that. But being a sports reporter and there's no sports going on, it's difficult. I mean, you can report on the pandemic. That's pretty much what I did. I was covering the governor's press conferences daily on the pandemic, just hoping for answers. And we still are kind of in limbo. But the NFL announced no sideline reporting. I was talking with the Big Ten Network a lot, and the schools, it sounded like they weren't going to allow sideline reporters, but, make it work. And then the season's just gone away altogether. So it's just a tough time. I mean, we can't be there on the sideline or on the field. So we're very limited in what we can do for our networks.
Yeah, that's a far-reaching, kind of doomsday grasp that this seems to have. I think Cory wants to probably drill it down and get further on your thoughts on about this season and chances for will this actually happen? So Cory, I'll kind of let you frame that how you want to. What should Steph answer for us as an insider, if you will?
Yeah, more knowledge than we have. We're just guessing. We often say we're on a podcast. We're just a couple of schlub fans, and that's all fine and good. But Steph has some real knowledge on this. Steph, just gonna ask you point blank: Was there ever an opportunity to bring the fall season back first? Let's tackle that, or the elephant in the room on that one.
Going back to that Sunday meeting, I knew Friday their decision, essentially. The conversations I had was, all right, it's not happening. The players were doing their promo pictures, and I even talked to Justin Fields, and he was in high spirits. And there was all of this talk on Twitter and conversations. I mean, it looked like it wasn't going to be good. And he said he was in high spirits. And then they waited until Tuesday to announce it. But I know going into that meeting, the decision was essentially done. And then there's word of, okay, they're going to go rogue. I do believe that, everyone at Ohio State is willing to do whatever it takes to give those players the best opportunity possible. So I don't doubt that they were doing that. But at the same time, I don't think they were going to risk their position with the Big Ten. So it was, they're walking a fair line, but I know the priority was giving those players the opportunity that they worked so hard for. They were in a tough spot for sure.
Yeah, the more, and Cory, Steph, you can both push back on this or whatever, but the more I think about this, the more it sounds like Kevin Warren. It kind of sounds more and more like he's kind of coming out and saying, or the narrative's being cast as, this dude did not know what being a conference commissioner was, and he had a job that they felt he was qualified for from the Vikings, but he did not seem to understand the parameters of this job and this undertaking. And it seems now that he came to this meeting, like you said, you guys knew beforehand. He came to this meeting in mind of, I'm going to use this meeting as the vehicle to announce my decision to cancel this season. And I will field questions, but I will field them in a way that makes you think that the only way forward is canceling the season. I wasn't in the room.
No one else was in the room where it happened, the room where it happened, the room where it happened.
I don't have sources, but me reading between the lines, that's kind of how I read it.
We just assume that it happened, but no one else is in the room where it happened.
Yeah, I think the decision was essentially made, and they were hoping for the other conferences to just follow suit. I think they kind of wanted to come off as, hey, we were ahead of this. The Ivy League had just canceled their season. They did the right move for the March Madness, and they were probably hoping this would be the same case, but it was premature. Things were looking up. It looked like it could be doable, but you still never know. So whether or not we know this was the right decision, it was premature, and the whole time the communication was what was lacking. If there were medical experts saying this and he tried to relay that information to the presidents, it must not have translated well, or maybe just bring in those doctors firsthand to give that information, but to not give that to the public was where I think all the issues came out. I mean, the Pac-12 didn't have this backlash, but they produced a 12-page document. So you look at the differences there, and whether or not it was the right decision, I don't think that's what's the issue. I think it was all about how it came out and how it's been handled since then.
I agree with what you're saying. I think the underlying issue is the fact that the people want more transparency, because it's like even the parents that are protesting, they're not saying we need to play. I mean, some of them are, don't get me wrong. Seven Banks' mom made it pretty clear. But mostly they're saying we don't really understand how the process. And now Sam McEwen's article from Omaha.com shed a little light on that. I don't know if you saw it or not. Some people took it as nefarious, malicious by Kevin Warren. I took it as, wow, he just screwed up by not having the medical professionals, the ADs, and the presidents all together and on this. Seems like he talked to them separately. ADs were obviously in favor of playing. Medical professionals, I don't even for sure to this day know exactly what they were saying. And the presidents and chancellors, it's unclear, who was in favor, who wasn't in favor. So, Steph, what is your opinion? And basically, I'm trying to base on an article which may or may not be true, but I'm going to give Sam the benefit of the doubt. What's your opinion on how Kevin Warren has handled that issue? Because like you said, in Pac-12, they're not having that uprising.
I think he did say a statement that he didn't predict that he would get this backlash. And that, right. I mean, if you're going to take a job in the Big Ten, for me at least, anytime I'm interviewing for a job or I'm looking into one, I research. So whether or not you just don't know about what the Big Ten Conference is all about and their fan base and their players, you educate yourself on that. If you're up for a job or when you take the job, make sure you know what you're dealing with, because maybe he didn't have the experience. I mean, I definitely don't know what it's like to be a Big Ten commissioner, but it can't be easy, especially during a pandemic. But when it became clear, maybe that was too soon. The way it was handled afterwards, I think, is what the issue was. And then all the presidents, and no one really wants to come out and exactly say like the vote and all that. I kind of relate it to, you know, if you're dating someone that none of your family or friends like, and you just support them because they're not going to listen to you. I feel like it's kind of like that. Like, I don't agree with you, but you know, I care, so I'm going to be supportive. Ohio State, for example, they desperately want to play. They're going to do whatever it takes to play, but they do care about their relationship with the conference. There's such historical ties there. So I think it was that fine line, like, we're going to do everything we can for these players, but we can't risk our position with the Big Ten Conference.
You know that scene, you guys seen the movie Anger Management?
Yeah.
Mhm.
With Adam Sandler? Yeah. I just think when I hear you talk about this, the anger sharks are swimming in my head.
Oh, the anger sharks are swimming in my head. You gotta dump that shit. You gotta dump that shit. Oh, listen to me. Stay with me.
First of all,
Goose Fraba, my friend.
yeah, and I appreciate Steph being as fair as she is and balanced and, dare I say, classy and gracious in this to Kevin Warren. But I don't care if you live under a rock, how you could say, I was going to cancel college football and I didn't think people would get upset.
Yeah.
One of two things. He is and again, this is not an endorsement of Clay Travis, but he coined the phrase Corona bro. Unless Kevin Warren is such a Corona bro that he lives in such an echo chamber that he believes that COVID is the bubonic plague and most people are already dead and the few people that are alive are going to be okay with canceling football because there's no other way forward. The day after practice started and the schedules are released and everything, by the way, which is odd, he either believes that or he's just being intellectually dishonest. Because I'm going to tell you, 99.9% of people I think I speak for when I say none of us believe you, Mr. Warren, when you say this is about player safety. It's just, how can you? And especially when the parents are flying up and or many of them saying it, either A, let them play, or B, at least explain it to us. So, you know, he worked for Minnesota Vikings, right? How does he think it would be that if the you know, the powers that be there were like, we're going to cancel the NFC North. We're not going to do it this year. Oh, I didn't know you guys would be upset about that. Packer fans are upset that there's no football. Cory, you're a cheesehead. Could you imagine someone being like, well, since we take the draft off every year, we're just going to go ahead and take the season off too. Like, come on. Are you serious? How could you think, Cory, if someone said that and then they told you, I didn't know you'd be upset about it, what would you think?
I don't know if I believe it or not. I mean, that's just, it's like he's objectively an intelligent person, objectively speaking.
Has to be.
That's just an ignorance that's staggering. Yeah, football's not important in Ohio. You know, I have a theory, though. He's for the Minnesota Vikings, and all the Golden Gophers, according to PJ Fleck, are appreciative of the decision. They all don't want to play. Even their quarterback came out and said something along the lines of it was the right decision for our safety. I'm thinking he called PJ Fleck or the AD from Minnesota and just said, what do y'all think? As the Big Ten goes, the Golden Gopher football goes, right? So what do y'all think? Well, I don't need to talk to anybody else then. We're shutting down. It's just like I can't explain somebody saying I canceled football in the Midwest. I didn't know that would be a big deal.
Yeah, and again, I don't want to get political here, but I do think the politics of Minnesota probably live on the side of this is the bubonic plague. And that could have driven this, you know, part of the situation, like Cory said. But if you're one, who am I going to bounce this idea off of? Minnesota. They probably speak for the Big Ten, right? Like, I don't know about that. But moving past that, I'll get into something else I absolutely don't believe in. Steph, here, go ahead and correct me if I'm wrong on this. I don't believe spring football's a thing. Like, I think that's just like saying it's just like a flatten the curve or Narnia or just say something and hope. I don't believe spring football is happening or ever is really an intention. Do you? Am I wrong though?
I like what Nick Saban said. Is it JV? You can't have a spring and a fall. If you did, you're fragmenting the season. I mean, you can't have 2 full seasons in one calendar year. I can't imagine a player that would want to endure that. But they did look into the winter, the January, February, which could be doable. I talked to a lot of NFL agents about this. They're encouraging the players to stay with their teams and not necessarily sign just yet and then go off and train for the combine, because the combine is a 6 to 8 week training process. So why go through that and then what? Just wait until the combine if it happens. And the thing here is what no one really wants to wrap their head around is film is the most important part when it comes to the NFL draft. I mean, it's like 80-90% of what they're looking for. So I can't imagine a player wanting to play spring, then fall, and then go train for the combine. Like, that's just too much on the body. But the winter aspect could be doable. And because of that film aspect, and what Ryan Day has been saying, maybe Justin Fields would be, willing to do the January, February, if that's the option. But again, we can't predict the pandemic. We don't know what it's going to look like at that time.
Yeah, and that's not and yeah, and you're right. No one had Jeff Brom had to lay out a plan, right? So that's one of the reasons I don't believe it. I think Cory echoes that. I don't believe it because you didn't show me anything to make me think it was believable. It was kind of like, well, I won't tell him I'll cancel it. I'm just going to tell him I'm going to postpone it. And then I'm going to tell him more to do it in the spring. And in the words of Kevin Warren, paraphrasing, they probably won't care. I'll tell them we can do football in the spring. They probably won't care. And it's like, Cory, are we wrong to say it's not that believable because you haven't you haven't sold it very well?
I don't think it's happening. I just don't. I think I tweeted it out a while ago. Spring football, no chance. Not going to happen. Not because I have any insider knowledge or anything like that. It just doesn't make logistical sense. I mean, I do agree, Steph, that the January 1st, that's why Ryan Day's pushing for it. Right. January 1st start could work. And I didn't know that about the NFL agent's advice because I was like, man, you haven't talked to Drew Rosenhaus, I guess, because he seems like he's like, no, get out. But,
well, I was talking to players about whether or not they were going to announce if they're declaring, but it is smart to stick with your teammates. I mean, you're in a controlled environment. You won't be alone. I think that's a big thing, the mental health of the players, because they were going through a whirlwind. I mean, they were practicing and then this sprung on them. So, I mean, they've already been on a roller coaster. I was with him. I was wondering, hey, am I going to be on the field this season? So I can definitely understand how crazy it's been. But credit to Gene Smith. He has been vocal about, hey, I don't know if we're going to have a season for a while. It was clear like, hey, I'm going to do what I can, but be prepared. Be prepared. So I think he got the sense, and at least he was portraying that too to the public.
And you touched on this. We did want to get your thoughts on this, Steph. What was the psychology of the staff and locker room when all this hit? Like, how did they react to it?
I know Ryan Day's been having a very hard time with this. I mean, he's got a national championship caliber team, and he's just going to sit back and watch these other teams compete for that title. There's players like Shaun Wade and Jonathan Cooper who came back for this season, and they've gone through so much. And now they don't even have the option to play. I mean, they're having a very hard time. But the good thing is that Ohio State definitely has a strong culture there. I know that they have each other to lean on. It's bringing them closer together, but it's tragic what they're going through. Yeah.
You bring up some good stuff. Cory's going to ask you about the Snook story, and he's probably going to have to specify what Snook story, exactly. But I got 2 questions. One, first, I wanted to, and Cory, you can probably give your thoughts on this. Is that's the big thing? Like Buckeye Scoop, the new website out there, doing a good job bringing all kinds of content. But Cory, am I right to say they seem to be, hey, don't be transferring schools because ain't nobody gonna play. Ain't nobody playing football. And now it's kind of like, whoa, we're working on a season at a different time. And isn't this Steph, Corey, chime in here? Does it seem like maybe there's a conflict of reporting there, or they're just going with the latest news, and this is something you got to be fluid with?
Only the pandemic knows, essentially, and then how the country handles it. But for no one can say, I know we're gonna have a season, and I know we're not gonna have a season. I think it's just too unpredictable. I mean, in March, I was fully confident we would have a season, and that's what the staff and the people at Ohio State were telling me. There were questions like, no, they canceled March Madness, they won't have a football season, but we're definitely gonna have a football season, is what I was being told by everyone at Ohio State right at the beginning of this pandemic. And then July, when there was upticks, there was still confidence that we're having a season. It was pretty much like, how could you not, is what the vibe I was getting. If you're asking me about transfers, I don't see that happening. I think it'd be pretty complicated, especially when, again, we can't predict how the season's going to go. If they do play, we're 2 weeks away. If they do play that first game, who is to say they finished the season? It's too hard to tell. And when it comes to a national championship, like, people don't even know necessarily what they're playing for at this point. So I don't think anyone's going to be making those big decisions in such uncertainty right now.
Well, all right. Before Corey gets into the Snook story, because I'm sure he has some thoughts on that too, because I'm interested to hear his. So I'll let him frame that whole thing. But Steph, I know you're more official than us, so you gotta. I can pop off at the mouth here anytime I want. You got to play it a little more safe. But I'm gonna put you on the spot. You can say pass if you want. Well, first, can I put you on the spot?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. You can say pass. You can say pass if you need to.
Give me your best shot.
Okay. Well, I'm just thinking about, you told us this awesome story about how you went in and you did this whole bootstrap thing to make yourself a sports reporter, and you went into Dallas and was like, top 5 market. You say don't go, I say I'm going, right? And I say, this is my field now, and this is my microphone, and I'm going to report from this sideline. And you just kind of kick in the industry. So what if you go to the Big Ten office in Chicago and you start kicking doors down, and you bring in you sound like you're prepared, and you got a portfolio and a resume, and you kick open the boardroom, and you got the board of trustees or whoever there, and you're just sliding resumes, and they all read it, and you say, this is my conference now. I'm the commissioner, and everybody in the room goes, everybody in the room's like, she is the commissioner now. She is. So they turn to you, Commissioner Otey, your decision. Can we do fall football?
I would never have made the decision that early. The issue is I don't have the medical evidence that Kevin Warner had. But based on my perception and the information I have, that maybe Kevin Warner has something that I don't have, I would move forward. I completely trust what Ohio State is doing. I think they're doing a good job. I know all the other schools, but those that can't handle the testing, it would be up to them if the school or the university wants to opt out. But at the same time, we would need to hear from those players and those parents. I would 100% take in what the players, the families, the universities are saying to me. And most athletic directors, that we don't know the vote. We don't know if there was a vote, but I know that there was a bit of a divide when it comes to a president and an athletic director, or a governor and a president or an athletic director. If issues come up, then we handle those as we go. I wouldn't make an end all decision, because now you have bigger issues to face. A spring football season, media contracts, eligibility. There's so much more you have to sort out now by making a decision that early on without all of the information. I mean, there's more information coming out hour by hour, minute by minute. I would definitely take my time. I'm the type of person, I said it earlier, I need to be overly educated, do all my research before I make any big decision. And that's what I would have done. And I have mentors in the business. I reach out to the experts. I am always trying to get as much information as I can. And I would have been doing that during those meetings, having conversations, rather than pushing for an end of the fall and focusing on spring when I don't think that they ever focused on spring until the decision was already made. I would have figured out spring was doable before making that decision. So yeah, I would take it game by game, honestly.
Good. Like we've said, be ingenuitive adults and handle issues. Don't just cancel everything. The commissioner has spoken. Let there be fall football, she says. Cory, frame this snook thing up for us.
I will do that. I also want to build off what Steph's saying and the fact that I encounter a lot of people in person and on Twitter who they think the opinion is, well, I don't think players should play because of the illness, and other people, I'll admit, I don't speak for anybody here who's on the podcast, just my opinion, that I think they should be able to go forward with what we know. But some people are arguing the point, well, it's good that he did this because they shouldn't play during the pandemic, and other people, and I will say that I don't speak for everybody here or anything like that, I'm speaking for myself, that we should move on in the middle of all this. I think we can move on. But that's all irrelevant to the fact that it's the players and the parents that want to move on, and or at least a lot of them at least want to move on, or at least just have some transparency. What they think is what's most relevant. Like when people argue to me, well, I don't think they should play. Well, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that I think they should. I can tell you right now, if the parents and the players were all like in unison saying, I don't want to play, I don't feel safe, my tune would change. Like, well, if I'm not going to say that they should when they don't feel safe. Obviously, it should be more up to them. And that's, I think, what Randy Wade and company are protesting, is saying we didn't get really much of a say in this. We didn't have any communication. Why don't the people involved who are actually putting themselves at risk get more of a say in this? But yeah, and it goes back to moving on to the Snook story, though. Steph, I'd like to know your opinion on this, because he's actually, I think, deleted those posts that he made, or at least made them unavailable. I can't remember what it was. Basically saying that the Big Ten Gene Smith was trying to form a 6-team union to where they would go ahead and play each other round robin style, and even if the Big Ten sanctioned it or not. I think the truth is probably somewhere in the middle, but you would have more expertise on this. I mean, so what do you think about those stories that came out?
I would agree. I believe it's in the middle. He kind of didn't have to come out and say, yeah, that's what we're working on, because it was null and void by that point. The Michigan governor and president pretty much made their stance on that, and they were banking on Wisconsin and Michigan to join the other 4 teams. Now, was he going to go rogue? I don't think he would put the team in jeopardy with the conference. Now, if that happened, that could have been the end of the Big Ten. I mean, there'd just be so many issues, but it gets those players on the field. So, I mean, the reward was good enough to entertain those conversations. But when it became clear it's not going to happen, that's probably why he came out and said, no, that's not happening. I don't think he was trying to go against the Big Ten. I believe he was trying to do whatever he could for the players, but we may never know the truth. But I do agree. I think it's somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think in my opinion, if that story has any validity to it, it's probably Gene Smith going to these 6 other schools saying, look, we'll take it to Kevin Warren, and we'll try to say, hey, we want to play. Can we make it work with us 6 schools? If those other schools choose that they just don't feel safe enough, like the smaller schools, I know we're struggling, like you said earlier, with testing and creating a bubble-like atmosphere for the they don't have the resources of an Ohio State or Michigan or whatever. So yeah, my opinion is like he probably had something in the works. Like we got to find a way to have a fall season. These 6 schools want to play. Let us do it, but it just probably got shot down quickly.
Right. I definitely believe that they looked into it. But there are probably legal repercussions to it, media rights, there'd be a lot to it, but I don't doubt that they at least discussed it, looked into it, because it gets those players on the field in the fall. So anything that led to that, I guarantee that they discussed.
Yeah, I got to take my hat off to Ohio State for, like you said, trying to be play the best of both worlds here. My duty is to Ohio State, and I'm going to get my guys on the field. Now, I will abide by what my commissioner wants to do and run all plans through him, and I'm still trying to do that. It would be really tempting, especially if you're Ohio State, and especially if you're Ohio State with Penn State and other schools backing you, to go to the Big Ten. Hey, you need us a lot more than we need you. We will go be Notre Dame 2.0. We will go join the Big 12 and bring parity to matter of fact, you probably want us to leave because I don't count 3 championships running, right? So we need a little parity in the conference. I just, it would be hard for me not to want to flex some monopolistic muscles back in the Big Ten and be like, well, we love being a part of this, but you're really making it difficult here. So that's why with my short fuse, I'm probably not an athletic director or anything with those type of repercussions. Yeah, that's why, right? I mean, you guys are thinking, yeah, that's why, Johnny. It's not your.
Well, I also think they don't want to give one team too much power. I mean, yeah, Ohio State's probably the flagship team of the conference, but look out how they determined the Big Ten all-decade teams. I mean, there were several Ohio State Buckeyes that probably should have been in there, multiple, but they didn't want to go all Buckeye. And if you're going to go all decade, truly put in the best players out there. So there were some decisions there that were very surprising to me, but I think it all comes down to we're a collective conference. One can't be more superior than the other, but Ohio State does tend to be, the glue, the rivalry and all of that just brings so much to the conference. So I don't think they're trying to allow one team to have too much power. But when you have 4 teams, maybe 6, that creates some issues.
Yeah. And it's like you said, you don't want to steal the power from the conference, but you also want to say, well, how are you were able to steal it from me? I want to play. They want to play. They want to play. You say I can't. I mean, at this point, I'm thinking, I think I talked to Cory about this privately. I'm like, what if Ohio State and Penn State just call each other and go, hey, we're scrimmaging at your place on Saturday. Oh, and guess what? No, it's not sanctioned. It's not a game. It's not a game. People keep score at home if
Some
they
fun
want to.
on the field.
Yeah. Oh, also, Gene Smith and Christina Johnson also go, oh, no, Mr. Warren, you didn't want any part of this. I made the deal with Fox. I'm getting paid the dollars for the scrimmage that I did. This is not like you can't tell kids. Look, this is a tiny little anecdote. I grew up in Southern Ohio, out in the cornfields, right? Basketball was king there, Southern Hills League. There's no even football in the whole division. It's like the movie Hoosiers. It's a good basketball from small, unathletic white kids. The best you'll see, right? But anyways, for like the OHSAA, I'm sure you're familiar with them very well, Steph. But I think it's the month of July or August, you're not allowed to play any basketball against any other school and have score kept, right? So
Right.
Our boosters would just give the players gas money to drive down to other schools' open gyms, right? And they'd show up with their squad, you know what I mean? So this much smaller little piece, but I'm just at this point you got to wonder, what's stopping these type of rogue things from happening. I guess cooler heads are prevailing, and you're probably right about.
Some universities are allowing recreational teams to play. So imagine the Big Ten Division I football players jumping
Justin
into a
Fields
recreational league.
in flag
Send
football.
over that film.
Yeah. Oh, you imagine
That would be wild. That would be
Yeah.
wild.
you imagine trying to pull a flag off of Justin Fields or Cam Babb or somebody in the open field.
I'm not even
Now, that would be
attempting Master
funny.
T.
And rec league, Master T having a flag on is about the only way any of us would probably ever get.
No,
get
he'd
it.
still hurt. It would still hurt.
All right. Well, I think this is about towards the end of our list. I really appreciate you coming on, Steph. Cory, do you have any? Did we miss anything? I want to run this filter through you. Did we miss anything, Cory?
No, that's a bad filter. No, I definitely. Steph, you did a great job expanding on the issues that are tackling or that are going on with Buckeye fans right now. I think, Johnny, you actually did a great job of bringing on that last point, because we're talking about, there's a lot of people I think want to ask, well, why don't Ohio State just leave the Big Ten? And I know we've talked about, Gene doesn't want to disrespect the Big Ten. And I think a lot of fans right now are upset with Gene for that. But Steph, maybe go in just a little bit. What would be the ramifications if Ohio State even attempted that?
Oof. My initial thought's the rivalry. I mean, when you think of the Big Ten and Ohio State, you think of that game. So, I mean, that would be a huge, huge loss. And then when you think about when a team like Ohio State plays a non-conference team, those games are maybe smaller or bigger, whatever you may have it. But even within the Big Ten, there are some games that the Ohio State game really helps maybe a smaller, not as developed team. Like, you know, I won't say a specific team, but in those types of situations,
We know who you're talking about.
well, in those types of situations, it helps the other organization as well. So it would hinder not just the conference, but individual universities as well. If Ohio State left, I can't imagine others wouldn't. I just can't imagine Ohio State and Michigan being in separate conferences. That's such a hard thought for me to comprehend.
Could you imagine that? Could you imagine that's how the greatest rivalry in the history of sports, that's proven by science, it's not an opinion, it's proven by science. Just listen to the science. It's the greatest rivalry in all sports. Is, yeah, Michigan could say, well, it ended and we were up, but no one would remember it that way. It would be
Right.
Ohio State beat you mercilessly. You went through a cycle of coaches, and the beatings just got worse and worse till finally they said we were too good for the rivalry, and you can't compete anymore. Can you imagine that storyline, how that would end? They'd need another HBO film on the rivalry.
Well, imagine the chaos that Big Ten fans are experiencing right now. If those two teams were to separate, I can't even imagine how much bigger the backlash would be.
Oh, yeah. You're never going to make them happy. That's a good point. We're mad now. We'll do that. We'd be mad too. And people would say, well, Michigan can just put them on the schedule. No. Michigan would still be part of the Big Ten. That'd be the Big Ten's muscle flex backs, all right? They'd be like, no. You're not putting these guys on your schedule. Nope, not after the way they did us.
But will the Big Ten even have control over that? Because I think Michigan used to play Notre Dame all the time, and why can't they play Ohio State? It just wouldn't be the last game of the season.
I think that they would just I would just guess conference powers would press back and be like, no, you're not. I don't know.
I mean, I'm sure there'd be some pressure put on by the Kevin Warrens of the world, who Kevin Warren threatened Nebraska for attempting to branch out. So, but Nebraska doesn't have the pull Ohio State does, obviously. I agree. That's an interesting scenario Steph was talking about, like having like Ohio State plus 6 other teams say, we're out. See you. Bye.
Right.
Yeah. Open bidder, high market, you know.
And those are strong programs in the Big Ten that are rallying together.
Yeah. And the academics, you know, obviously actually matters to the Big Ten. So that would be another, you know, there's a lot of, you know, weaving in and out there that I'm sure we'd have to deal with. Last point before we log off, Randy Wade brought it up on Twitter. He said, what if there was a rally in Columbus? And I said, do it on the weekend and watch. I mean, can you imagine that? The people that would be there, and instead of making people travel to Chicago. And so I'll go. I live in Norfolk. I'll go. I'll go. I'll get on you say, would you waste all that money on a plane ticket to Columbus for? It's not money. It's a credit card. You just swipe it. You never have to pay it. Yeah, I'd be there. I really would. I mean, and Cory, you know, maybe the state of Florida would let you cross state lines. Maybe. I don't know if you'd have to.
Letting me out.
If you showed up, there would definitely be a season.
All right, enough.
Yeah.
No, Steph, you can be the sideline reporter of the protest.
Oh boy.
Yeah, there you go. Your private portfolio covering that right there.
Yeah, I mean, they came together in other times. I wouldn't be surprised if they came together in Columbus, and parents are willing to travel. So we might see, I mean, just imagine that September 3rd, that Thursday where they were supposed to start their season, when they released the schedule just days before they canceled it. But what's going to happen September 3rd? I bet something, you know, I bet they don't just sit around.
No,
that's not news. I'm just thinking out loud here.
No, you just made it. You just announced and created and founded the movement. I love it.
I don't want to be the ringleader here. But I'm just thinking out loud, like that day, September 3rd, their schedule was supposed to start. I can't imagine them just sitting there. I bet they do something.
That's a good point. That is a really good point. Well, Steph, we really appreciate you coming on, and we'll have to do it again sometime. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem. Always, guys, thank you so much for listening to the Scarlet and Great podcast. We will try and catch you again next week and go into more Buckeye content. As always, we wish you goodbye, God bless, and go Bucks.